of the great things about Lindenwood University's music business and entrepreneurship program is how focused it is on helping students develop the skills they need to be successful in the current real-world music industry. These days, it's all about being able to handle a broad range of production skills, playing, writing, and recording, and then it's just as important to be able to cultivate a strong business acumen, like understanding how to promote yourself and market yourself in the art that you produce. Because as an artist looking to make a living, you're basically your own commodity. You need to focus on how to build yourself and your art into a business model which will enable you to sustain a living so you can continue to make art. And the music business, it's always been pretty crazy, and it probably always will be. Maybe that's what makes it so much fun. But it is very much a business. There are more people producing music than ever before, because we have this technology that allows us to create a song and publishing it online in less than an hour, which is very cool. Anyone can do it. But this also means that it's going to be more competitive than ever before because you have all these people doing it. So getting a degree in music business and music production, it's become the new educational model of the 21st century. It empowers you to create your own story, because if you can learn to play and write music, then you can learn how to be an entrepreneur and sustain a career, which is about making a living as an artist. Everyone knows that a music career is challenging and requires endless hard work and all of that. And that the industry, it's always evolving and changing, like every few months it seems. I think we all get that. However, what hasn't changed is that anyone still has a shot at a successful career. And the people who are achieving that success are the ones who know the importance of being knowledgeable in the whole range of abilities that one needs to negotiate the music industry. So here at Lindenwood University, we're all about helping you take your music and your entrepreneur skills to the next level. I love being part of a school that is all about showing the students these real-life skills that will help them be successful in an ultra-competitive industry. Those skills are what are going to make a difference between your music as a hobby and your music as a successful career path. On a 22 fret guitar, there are a total of 138 note locations. That's a lot of notes to play with. And as musical instruments go, this can be a very cool advantage, and sometimes this can be somewhat of a curse as well. Because how do you avoid option anxiety when it comes to choosing where to play the notes you need to play when you want to play them? Now, of those 138 notes, there's actually only 47 different pitches within a range of almost 4 octaves. This means there are 91 redundant notes on the fretboard, and it's these redundancies that makes the game so very interesting. The game of mapping out music all over the fretboard. All of this is why guitarists sometimes we get overwhelmed with figuring out the many options to execute any melody or chord progression, because you can literally come up with thousands of ways to play most anything on the guitar, especially melodic phrases. So the key here is to use a methodical and organized approach to exploring these possibilities. The way to do that is to look at each of the individual components of the phrase and how that allows you to make the phrase sound musical and cool. These components entail where you map the notes out on the fretboard, and how that affects your options for fingering and for any articulations. The guitar, it's an amazing instrument for playing melodies in that we have so many options for expressing the nuances of the melodic line. And with art, it's all about knowing your options, right? If you have more ways to do something, then you can create your art in a deeper and broader context. So in this video, we're going to look at some examples of melodies as phrases. We're going to see how to explore the many options you have to phrase your melodies in a musical, artful, and beautiful way. So here's a pretty basic phrase. It's short, but it's got just enough notes in it to give us some interesting possibilities for fingerings and articulations. I'm playing it in the second position. Now let's make sure you know what that term means, position. In the world of guitar, it gets used a few different ways, like many people refer to scale patterns as scale positions. So they'll play something like that and call that a position. And that's all right, it's just, it gets a little confusing if we have more than one meaning for the same word. For our discussion here, we need to use the word in its traditional musical meaning for guitar, and that is a position is defined by the fret number that your first finger is located. So what that means is I'm in second position because my first finger is here on the second fret, and then my second, third, and fourth finger line up on the subsequent frets, on frets 3, 4, and 5. So a traditional position on the guitar would be basically all these notes here. And that's 24 notes in a nice, neat and tidy little position with 4 fingers, 4 subsequent frets. And being able to define where you are on the fretboard is very handy to get into these kinds of details. You also want to know that sometimes when we're in a position, we might reach up to other frets with the fingers, like if I were to play this. That would still be in second position even though my fingers were going up to higher frets. And sometimes patterns and things will change positions in the middle of it. So now we've got that word clarified. Let's take a look at this phrase in different positions. So I'm basically going to show you just a few ways out of the many possibilities you can map these notes out. So here we were in second position. Now I can get to all those notes here in fourth position. And then I can reach it here in seventh position. But here I move down to sixth position just to facilitate getting that C sharp there in the third string. Here I'm in ninth position. And again, I was able to reach all the notes here all in ninth position, nice and neat and tidy. Here I'm in 12th position. And I ended up in 11th position. And then up here in 14th position. So that's a lot of places to play one phrase, and it's cool to know how to play things in different places and all that, but there's reasons why you would choose one position over another. You may have noticed as I was going up the fretboard, I was going to the lower strings, and it was getting a little darker and warmer there. That's always a consideration, your tone. But the idea here is that we're looking at just possibilities, and so that you can scope out options for making the phrase more comfortable to play. When you pick a position to play in, then you can start exploring even more possibilities of changing the fingers in a position. Let me go back to second position here and show you what I mean. So it's all in second position, but I'm kind of playing off of my second and third finger, and I might want to move up to third position. Starting on my second finger, I have this. And I end ended up back in second position. So why would you do something like that? Well, just whatever is comfortable for you. Like I tend to favor my first, second, and third finger, but I use my fourth finger all the time. It's just that if I'm going to play a phrase that's going to be mostly on the second, third, and fourth finger, then I might explore a fingering to kind of shift that a little. So I have this. Let's take a look here at that other mapping on the fourth position. So same thing, I kind of end up playing a lot on my second, third, and fourth finger. Let's see if I can change that. So there I went, 1, 2, 2, 1. And what that did is give me a position shift up to position 5, and then I was staying with my first, second, and third finger, and it's a little more comfortable. I could also do this. Here I went up with my third finger from the C sharp to the D, and then I used my fourth finger to play the F sharp, the last note on the second string. And what that did was, so I didn't have to do this with the third finger, this adjacent string kind of fingering technique, which is fine. So it's something we use on the guitar, but using another finger is more comfortable. You want to make this like what's comfortable for you. Explore options, and you'll see that changing just one finger or moving a note from one string to another makes a big difference. Let me check out some of the other patterns here. If I go to this one here, that's pretty comfortable. It's all in the ninth position. I might do this here, but again with the third finger. So, as you can see, lots of possibilities. I could hang out on any of those 6 mappings, those 6 positions that I put the phrase in. I could hang out with any of them for quite a while and explore fingerings. And that was just changing fingers. I wasn't doing any articulations yet. I wasn't doing any slides or anything like that, or Hammerons and Pulloffs. We're going to do that next. But that's just to show you that when you have a simple phrase, it is all over the place on the fretboard. Other things that you can do, if I go back down here to second position, what if I took this F sharp and put it on the second string here and use this fingering? So that got me up there and I didn't have to reach over to the first string. Things like that are all over the place. So we're just getting started here, mapping notes out. And then what we're going to do now is take a look at the articulations. The articulations that we're going to focus on in this lesson. It's just going to be hammerons and pull-offs and slides. What I was just doing was picking every note, which is an articulation technically, and that's great. You can always pick every note. But the having the option to attack the note in different ways with hammerons and pull-offs and slides and all that, we're going to look at that and explore how that's going to take all these options and then multiply those. But it's super fun to explore this stuff and hang out with a phrase just to show you the possibilities. And then you start to get kind of this feel for it where it starts to come naturally. It's like you're programming your subconscious mind. And then when you're playing music, when you're performing, when you're improvising, when you're reading music, it's like your subconscious has already been shown the many possibilities, and you can trust it to pick the ones that sound best and work best in that moment. So let's see what happens when we find hammerons and pull-offs that we can do in this same phrase. What I recommend is separating articulations out into the separate categories. In this case, we're just going to be talking about hammerons and pull-offs. And what we want to do is find all of the opportunities to execute a hammer-on. Let's do that first. We'll start with the phrase in second position. And so we're essentially looking for any two notes on any given string that are ascending. That's going to be our opportunity for hammer-ons. So the first two notes, this F sharp and the G, we can do a hammer-on. Then we have the B and the C on the third string. And then we have the C sharp and the E on the second string. And the C sharp and the D. So those are all the possible hammer-ons. Now the thing is, it's like you're taking an inventory of every location of each option, and then you start exploring possible combinations and how you want to do it, because this doesn't mean you have to use every hammer-on or every pull-off you find, of course. You're basically kind of seasoning to taste with the phrase, and you get to pick where you're going to put them in. So here's all of them. And that works. But what if you just wanted to put a couple in? I'll put the first one in, and then the meaning in the F sharp and the G, and then the C sharp and the D. So that's a different feel. It's just a couple of hammer-ons put in there just to create some interest compared to the other notes which we're picking every note. So that's pretty much how you go about it. You find all of the occurrence of that articulation, and then you work with that, decide if you want to put all of them in or just some of them or none of them. So let's look for pull-offs. Now we're looking for essentially any two notes on a given string that are descending. That's what a pull-off is. So we have the E to C sharp is the only opportunity for a pull-off. All right, so that's very organized. That's what, when you do it that way, rather than just jumping in there and trying to find them and combine them and mix things up right away, you might miss some of them, because as things start getting involved, you know, some of these details don't always jump out at you. So let's look at combining hammer-ons and pull-offs. That has a whole lot of options there. Let's see, I'll do this. So I'm doing the hammer-on from F sharp to G, and then the B to the C, and then I put the pull-off from the E to the C sharp. That sounds good. So that's a nice blend. The other option you have, of course, is combining hammer-ons and pull-offs into one action. I assume you're all familiar with that. Let's see if I do this here. So I went on the second string, the C sharp, I hammered on up to the E, and then pulled off to the back down to the C sharp. And you could move that to by move it, I mean I kind of shifted the hammer and pull off over to the E, pull off to the C sharp, and then a hammer on to the D. So that was a little different than the phrase right before it. So the thing is, you want to be aware here when you are picking and choosing these hammer-ons and pull-offs and doing combinations like I just did, that what's going to happen is you are essentially doing a pull-off or a hammer-on either into the beat or off of the beat. So that feels different, and it's part of our everyday technique and feel when it comes to rhythm, especially with jazz, because of the swing feel. The emphasis is on the beat so much. So being able to do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's hammering on into the beat, or being able to just pick any note here and hammer on from the beat, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there the first note was on the beat and the hammer on was coming into the and. And same, of course, with pull-offs, pulling off into the beat, 2, 3, 4, or pulling off on the beat, starting on the beat, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's real subtle but very important, and I'm not going to get into every little thing here with every phrase because we will be here for forever with all these possibilities, but this was kind of the right time to bring that up. It was part of everything about doing this phrasing and adding hammerons and pull-offs. So that sometimes you're hammering or pulling off into the beat or sometimes off of it. So always be aware of that, and so that you can make the wise choices, the informed choices as you work these articulations into a phrase. Again, it's all about sitting down and exploring a bunch of possibilities with one small little idea. That trains you to where you get really good at just doing it instinctually. So now we're going to talk about slides, and here's where it's going to get very interesting with the fingering, because with slides your fingering and positioning will automatically go to a different place, kind of literally and figuratively. And taking a phrase and looking for all the possible slides like we did with Hammerons and Pulloffs when we're kind of taking that orderly approach, sort of taking an inventory, how many hammer-ons are possible, how many pull-offs are possible. Trying to do how many slides are possible, yes, but you'll find that there'll be so many possibilities it'll kind of maybe get out of hand. Let me show you with the same phrase again from second position. I'll put a slide in here and a slide in here, but then I can do this like all these notes on one string. That's like too much sliding, really. You have to be careful with slides. Due to their inherent nature, they're always good for like half steps and whole steps. And that way they're similar to hammer-ons and pull-offs, but how they're different from hammer-ons and pull-offs is that any slide bigger than a half step, you're technically adding more pitches into the equation. So that's a lot. That's a big slide. So let's look at how slides, you can put them in a much more musical fashion where they're not so wonky like that. They'll kind of start to make you seasick. So I'm going to just put some slides in here in a more musical way. So that's better. There are 3 slides in there in places in the phrase that made more sense. I'm choosing my fingering deliberately on this one to set up the slide, meaning I'm going down a position to put my hand and finger where they need to be to execute the slide. So I'm starting with the 3rd finger on the F sharp on the 4th string, and that slides me into 3rd position for those notes. Then I go down again to the B to slide with the 3rd finger into the C, and then I reach over for the C sharp, and then I reach over for the C sharp again with my 2nd finger, and that sets me up for the slide into the F sharp on the 1st string. So that's an example of where slides are a little more tasteful. You can do things like, and here I did with my 1st finger. We actually did that fingering in an earlier example when I was just showing you how you can move notes. Just take one note and put it on another string to give yourself different opportunities. So I have, that way I can just slide with my 1st finger and stay on that string. Again, lots of possibilities here. Let's look at, let's go to the next position where we map this phrase out. Start with a slide, and a pull off, and a hammer on, and then a slide up into that D from the C sharp. That feels real nice, and that's what we're going for here is phrases that have articulations in them and positioned in a way where it feels comfortable for your hand, and it's going to feel better and it's going to sound better. Now in this position, you've got 5 notes on one string here, so you could actually do this. Actually, with a B, D, B, C, C sharp, I did all of that with a hammer-on, pull-off, hammer-on, and then set up the slide. So you want to look for stuff like that. That's the whole point of this lesson, is that you have to look for these things intentionally, because there's so many possibilities, you might not see all of them. And it's kind of fun to explore and find things you might not normally do with your fingering, and it builds out your technique. If I go up here to the 9th position, let's see, what I like about that one is this mechanic right here of the hammer-on. From the C to the C sharp, and then the slide up to there. That feels good. I wonder if I could put 2 slides there. Anything's possible. Like you end up with so many possibilities that it might be overwhelming. That's why it's good when you work on this, is to write them down, and that's why I have an example in music and tab for everything I'm playing, because otherwise it'd be too much for your brain to keep track of. Right there. That just feels good. A hammer on and a pull off. So those are the things you want to look for. Taking one phrase like this and exploring it. I know it's a lot, but that is the point of this, is to show you that sitting down and spending this kind of time with one phrase is what's going to build out your playing, and then it starts to become instinct, and then you don't even have to think about it. Your hand will find cool ways to phrase any melody that you are going to play, like in any situation live, where you're reading or you're improvising. All right, let's take a look at another line. It's a D minor line based on D melodic minor. And let me just show you some basic mappings and fingerings of it up the fretboard here. We even do it up an octave here. And even down here in open position. Alright, I'll just put them up on the screen there. You can scope them out, pause the video, and take a look at those. And then what we're going to do now is look at some different kinds of mappings and fingerings with this phrase, a little different than the neat and tidy 4 fingers, 4 frets kind of thing we were looking at, just to get you into another space where you can see the possibilities here we've been talking about, where you can really go off and explore different fingerings that are maybe unconventional, things you don't normally do. All right, here we're in 5th position. So that was favoring more of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd finger, and then a pull off and a slide, and then 2nd, 3rd finger again. Then we have this finger here go up an octave. This is kind of interesting because it sort of spreads out the fingers over more frets, but we're up higher so the frets are closer together. And now here's a very interesting finger I want to show you because this involves open strings. We have a D, an E, and a B in this phrase, and we can use those as open notes. We have D, E, and B. which live down here. That's where these notes are, but I'm going to get the other notes in higher positions. So check this out. I'm going to utilize the open notes and have my hand in 7th and then 10th position. And the other thing I'm doing is I'm letting these notes ring over because I can, and it gives it kind of an interesting tangy flavor to it because of the notes clashing, but in a cool way. And I can even play it up here. Darker up here, but I'm getting the open D and then E, F, A, open E, hammer on C sharp to D, open E again, and then the F on the 3rd string and an open B. You almost end up with like basically kind of a chord sound ringing, and that's a pretty common approach these days where you're utilizing open strings, incorporating them into lines where you're in other positions. Just creates some interesting sounds and possibilities. One more phrase here I want to show you just to throw in another example. Because this line's all in 10th position. And that works fine. Check this out. So it's all on just 2 strings, whole step slide, whole step slide, whole step slide, pull off, another pull off, and then a slide. So the whole idea here with these last few phrases was to show you that you can really take some interesting approaches, different angles on things as you figure out where these notes are. And that was the whole concept that we got into here in this video. So right there's a whole bunch to think about and work with. In this video, we looked at how taking a cognitive approach to phrasing is an effective method for developing your fundamental musical sensibilities. It's about slowing everything down so you can think about every little thing, explore the possible options, and work them out on your instrument. The way to solidify these concepts for yourself is to spend time with each of these phrases in this lesson and learn them with the exact mapping and fingering and articulation indicated. And then explore even more ways to phrase them. Like try all sorts of variations. Look for the ones that you normally wouldn't do. This is all about expanding your approach. Whatever you come up with, write them all out on paper, standard notation, tab, just like these examples. And of course, you want to do this with any of your own phrases that you come across or composed, because doing this kind of work does wonders for your ability to create optimal fingerings on the fly, like while sight reading and improvising, performing. Also, I understand that for some of you, this may have been a realization of where you were at with your grasp of the fretboard, how to navigate it, meaning knowing your note names and your vocabulary. I cannot stress strongly enough the importance of studying your instrument, learning how to apply music theory, as well as being fluent with scale patterns and arpeggio patterns, chord voicings. Every jazz musician knows this and does this. So, after spending time with a few dozen melodies and crafting how you articulate them, you will essentially have programmed your subconscious mind and your body in a way that eventually you can just turn everything over and not have to think. You can just play and be in the moment. And that is the ultimate experience of creative freedom, right? Of playing flowing melodies that sound musical and natural and cool. So thank you again for watching. Peace.